the potential is we can come together. We can love in much bigger ways. And any barrier to love, i.e. fear, i.e., disagreements or disappointments, anything we're bringing into our relationships that's kind of a carryover from the past that isn't working, isn't healthy in the dynamics of our relationships, we're slowly, subtly starting to compost that stuff, send it to where it needs to go so that we can show up more authentically in our relationships.
This podcast episode is brought to you by The Inner Circle, your place to learn astrology in community with the masters and transform your life in the process.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to your weekly astrological weather. This is the place where we explore the astrology of the week ahead, so you can get insights into the major themes. You can pinpoint the most important energies for you, and you can use this information to help you make timing decisions or navigate challenges or align your efforts with the cosmic tides so that you don't feel like you're swimming against the tides. For those of you who are new to our channel, welcome. So happy that you found us. I'm Amanda Poole-Walsh, the founder of Astrology Hub. And if you are new, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you know when we have new videos that come here on this channel. And right now we are talking to someone very special. She's very special in general, but also she is one of the very first astrologers that I ever interviewed. I still remember exactly where I was, sitting on my bed. It was audio only then. We didn't do any video. So I was sitting on my bed and I was blown away by her. And I was telling her before we even went live that when I think of her or I think of her name or I see her on social media, I still have this really bright place in my memory because of that conversation we had years ago, which I think it was literally 7 years ago now, one of the very first events that we did here at Astrology Hub. So I am referring to Rachel Lang, who has been practicing astrology since 2006. She combines marketing and astrology knowledge in working with her corporate clients. She's certified by the American Federation of Astrologers. She's also a member of ESAR and NCGR. She has her master's in theology from Loyola Marymount University, and her thesis was focused on gender, religion, and justice. She's the author of the book, Modern Day Magic, 8 Simple Rules to Realize Your Power and Shape Your Life. She's also one of our future Inner Circle astrologer guides. She's going to be one of our teaching astrologers here in the Inner Circle in which March? What month is it, Rachel?
January of 24.
Yes, nice. January 24. And I just am so grateful, Rachel, that you're back here at Astrology Hub. Welcome, welcome. So happy for your Astrology Hub podcast debut. And I just want to thank you for being such an amazing astrologer and being out there and spreading so much light into the world.
Oh, thank you so much, Amanda. And I want to thank you too for spreading your light in the world and really making astrology accessible to so many people who otherwise wouldn't know about our world. So Thank you for all you do. And yeah, I loved that summit, participating in it. I remember where I was when we were first recording that. I think it was like 2013 or 2014. I was at my desk and I had all this whole talk prepared and I wanted to do it perfully. And then as soon as I started talking to you, I was like, oh, I can just let this flow. This is
exactly. Yes. Oh, well, it's so great to have you back. And what we'll be doing today is looking at the astrology of February 27th through March 5th. And I know we have some really big astrological transits to discuss. So why don't we start with that big picture theme? What would you say is the theme for the week if you had to choose one thing for us to really anchor on?
Yeah, I think, when I look at this week, and we'll talk about the specifics of what transits that we're talking about. But when I look at this week, I think the theme is absolutely love. And it's love to the nth degree. But here's the thing. Any one of us who have been in relationships, who have had children, who have friends or family, we know that love is not always roses and honey.
Mm-hmm.
Love is not always chocolate. That love is love is that protective mama bear force that says, do not put that, pin in a socket. Don't run into the street. Sometimes a heartbreak. Sometimes it's letting go of a relationship. Love is delivering the truth in a safe space. And love is also, grief is an expression of love. And so when we're talking about love this week, it's the experience of the bigness of the connections that we have. And so that's really the theme. It's like love, love, love.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when you say experience, I love how you said everything you just said. When you say the experience of the bigness, do you mean the experience of the spectrum of what love encompasses?
Yeah, I think what it is, it's definitely the bigness of it. It's also the way that love can take our breath away, and the vulnerability that we feel when we are interconnected with other people. It's how deep we can go in the experience of love. And so those are all parts of, love as I'm seeing it this week. Sometimes love, when we're talking about Saturn and Venus, or Saturn in any kind of context of love, we're talking about the logistics of a relationship. When this is not what we're talking about this week. This week, we're talking about the experience of being so deeply interconnected with one another, the experience of love, the emotions of love. And so often that can be sort of difficult to navigate when we are in these, Saturn structures, families and friendships. And, there are certain rules and expectations with relationships. And so this week, it's like, no, we're not even looking at the rules. We're not even looking at the expectations. We are giving ourselves over to how deeply we feel for one another.
Wow. And it sounds to me like a question that we might be carrying with ourselves throughout the week is, what is love? What does love actually look like you just said, without the structures or the preconceived notions or the boxes that we try to put it in because this is this type of relationship or this is this type of relationship. So just sort of questioning our assumptions or our socialization even around what love is.
Yep. I think that's a really beautiful way to articulate it. Love is going to show us what love is. And one of the things about love that I'm a Libra. I have a Taurus rising. Venus is a very big player in my chart. Venus isn't really always that happy in the sign of Scorpio, but, she's a big player in my chart. And so I think about love a lot. I think about, I'm on the core team for relationships in astrology. I teach about relationships in astrology. I teach about relationships and love and all of that. And so I'm aware of the fact that, as you were saying, that love can be a construct, that we have these ideas of what love is. But really those rules, that framework, that intellectual framework is nothing when we're in the experience of love. And so this is it's an opportunity for us to deepen our understanding, to really deepen our access to love, which means all love and all relationships relate back to ourselves. So it's also about opening ourselves up and healing any barriers or any resistance that we have to being loved.
So good. Okay, let's dive into the day-to-day. Let's unpack why you're saying that as the major theme.
Yeah, great. So I want to just kind of set a stage here. And that is that when we're looking at the astrology of this week, we'll talk about the day-to-day experience of it, but the overarching astro that's happening is that Saturn and Pluto are both at 29 degrees of their respective signs. So Saturn's in Aquarius, Pluto is in Capricorn, and they're both pushing out of their cycles that they've been in. I mean, Pluto since 2008, Saturn since 2020. And so we are kind of on the edge of our seats, waiting for what's going to happen. Pluto's moving to Aquarius next month on the 23rd. That's the biggest transit of the year, in my opinion. And it gives us a preview of what's coming next year. And Saturn's move into Pisces is very significant too. And that's going to happen on the 7th. But both of these planets, when any planet is at the 29th degree, the anaretic degree is considered the degree of death. It's not saying that anyone's going to die. Let me clarify that really, really clearly. But what it represents is kind of an in-between transition, weird transition space where we're not quite in the new cycle. We don't know what that cycle is going to bring or what it's going to manifest, but we're not quite out of the previous cycle. And so we kind of walk around that whole 29-degree period like what's going to happen. And so all of that is looming over us throughout this week. We're also coming on the heels of the first quarter lunation phase, and that starts at 12:05 in the morning on Monday. And so we have the Gemini sun squaring the Pisces moon. So the first quarter is when the moon is gaining light and we're starting to see things that we couldn't see before. We have little bursts of insight. And I love that this is a Gemini moon, because Gemini is the messenger. And so we're getting new insights. You might read a news story that colors your whole week, or you might hear some gossip. We're talking about Gemini. You might hear something that really compels your attention and you want to look and learn more. The Pisces sun also is just opening our hearts, opening us up spiritually, opening us up to our dreams, allowing us to work with our imaginations, to paint some new pictures, to manifest some new desires. It's like bringing things out into the open that have been hidden. And so this first quarter moon really, it shines a light on situations in our lives, putting this in really practical terms. It shines a light on all areas of our lives, allowing us to see, I like that. I don't like that. I think I want to change that. And so we have kind of a new understanding of our relationships, of our jobs, of certain situations in our lives, of why things are the way they are. And keeping in mind those 29 degrees of that Saturn and Pluto, both in those getting ready for their new cycles, what we're shining a light on is anything that is keeping us from Saturn, from really being secure and stable in our sense of mission and work and purpose. And then Pluto, anything psychologically that's needs to be explored or examined in order for us to really be more whole. So that's kind of the big news on Monday. We also have the moon trine Pluto early that morning. And this is another transit that's going on that same day, is that Mercury is in a sextile aspect to Eris. And so Mercury, let me separate these a little bit just in case people don't work with dwarf planets. Mercury's the messenger. Mercury is not just the way we communicate with one another, but it's our own internal dialogue. On kind of a more mundane perspective, Mercury relates to the ideas that we're sharing with one another, the news stories that we're reading. And Eris is important because through 2020 and 2021, Eris and Pluto were in this challenging dance, really instigating a whole lot of cultural change all at one time, and kind of in a disruptive way, because Eris doesn't do anything without drawing a little attention to herself. Same with Pluto. And so any planets that come into an aspect relationship with Eris or Pluto bring us back to some of that time and some of what disruptions were happening in our lives for the purpose of progressive change. So we have new insights, we have new ideas, new understanding, and also just a little bit of an edge to it. And so that's another influence that I wanted to bring up about Monday.
Let me ask you a question about the first quarter moon. Is not another one of the sort of bigger context things that we're working with all week, or is that more specific to that energy on Monday?
Yeah, great question. So with any quarter phase of the lunation cycle, so the full moon, new moon, first quarter, second quarter, it is a new chapter of a cycle that began with a new moon on February 19th. So yes, it colors the week. And we could apply that same level of thinking of, the brighter the moon gets in the sky, the more clearly we see things. And so the waxing moon is like a buildup of awareness. And so you might be sitting at the breakfast table and get a text and it's like, oh yeah, that thing I was really, that intention that I was setting on the new moon, on the Pisces new moon, here's a piece of information about it. Oh gosh, how amazing. And then that information leads you into an inquiry. You get more information. And while the moon is waxing, we are gaining energy. We are gaining awareness. We are becoming more clear about different aspects of our lives. So yeah, so it does color the whole week.
And Rachel, this is a little bit of a sidebar question, but what you just described first requires that the person actually set intentions at the new moon, or at least has an awareness of what they're wanting to manifest during that particular lunar cycle, which is something that we do together in the inner circle, which I'm very excited because I know that you work with the idea of magic and creating magic in our lives, and especially with the tool of astrology. Do you agree that timing your intention setting with the new moon is a powerful practice? Like, do you encourage your clients to do that? How have you seen that play out for people and for yourself as well?
Yeah, great question. I have two thoughts about that. One, I think that magic and astrology go hand in hand. And so when you are setting intentions, when you're doing any kind of ritual, I think why not sync up to the cosmic waves? Why not work with the universe and the forces of nature? That's what magic is anyway. And then I also want to say that we're setting intentions even when we don't intentionally set them. And very often, new moons are great times for intention setting. Like you said, I love the work that you do with the inner circle. So, but a lot of times we're setting intentions without even realizing it. So then an example is, thinking one day you have a thought, I think I want a puppy. And so that's an intention. Or, oh, I want to go shopping. These are all intentions. Anytime we feel a little spark of desire, that's an intention. So you don't have to write out your intentions or do a ritual around them, but just observe, maybe through journaling, what's up for you, what desires are awakening during that new moon. And very often you'll see those desires sort of start to spark into being right around. It takes about 6 months altogether for one cycle, but you start to see little inklings of awareness right around that first quarter stage, and then again during the full moon.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you for answering that question. I love hearing different astrologers' perspectives on intention setting with the lunar cycle and then how that plays out over time. And it's perfect. Okay, so let's talk about Tuesday then.
Tuesday is interesting because Venus is the star of this week's astrology, and Venus touches a number of points on her way through Aries, and she meets up with Vesta on Monday, but we feel this influence on Tuesday as well. And we're going to start to feel Venus's move toward Jupiter, which happens on the 1st. But Venus and Vesta is the asteroid that relates to purification and ritual processes. She also relates to the home, to the hearth, which means that whatever connects us to our family, our loved ones, our space, the physical space that we live in. And so I kind of see Venus's meetup with Vesta being this sort of rite of passage. Like, okay, what is Venus? Let's separate out what we're talking about when we're talking about Venus. We're talking about love, obviously. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about anything related to the heart chakra. But Venus is also fashion. She's also style, beauty, delicious food. She's the sense of pleasure that we derive from being in a human body, our physical senses. And so And so when Venus meets up with Vesta, we become really clear of what we can do to make our space more sacred. So this is a great day to, since we are still in the energy of that first quarter moon, still in Gemini, we can beautify our space. We can add a sacred element to it. We can do some feng shui. In our relationships, we can, take on a perspective of being more of service, and, or as I like to say, being the change we want to see in our relationships. And if we do that, if we let Vesta really help us and remind us that love is sacred and that we are sacred, and even the experiences of sadness and grief and loss are sacred, then we can move through the rest of the week having a sense of groundedness. There's a moon square Neptune transit that happens on the 28th, and that happens at 7:45 a.m. Moon is sextile Jupiter. So the moon is going to be activating a number of these points that Venus is going to be activating. And so we have this really lovely little dance here where Venus is kind of frolicking through Aries. And, Gemini's a really playful moon sign. So we're not taking things too seriously.
It sounds like that energy may also enable us to bring more lightness to any situations in our life that do feel or have felt heavy. Maybe there is sadness and grief, but with the playfulness of that Gemini moon, it might be easier to kind of work through a lot of those emotions.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And that helps because the next day on the 1st, the moon moves into Cancer, and the shift from the moon in Gemini to the moon in Cancer, going from sort of a witty, fun, intellectual, more cerebral way of being into the depths of our connections, the depths of our emotions. It's going to feel like I'm ready for what's coming next. And Wednesday, so whenever Jupiter meets up with one of the personal planets, but in particular Mercury, the Sun, or Venus, those are generally some of our better days of the month, or the year rather. So this Jupiter and Venus meet up once. They have an annual get together. And these are the two benefic planets, meaning they're the planets that most relate to life and fertility and joy and pleasure and things that really make us love being in a body on this planet. And so when you have them meeting up, we have exponential experiences of pleasure, exponential experiences of connection. And, and a lot of people think about this combo as being lucky or being like, good things happen. And so that's kind of a general overarching experience of these two. I'm going to add some dimension here. So that would all be just the message if Venus wasn't in Aries. These two are meeting up at 12 degrees of Aries. And so let's talk about Venus and Aries, and then we're going to talk about Jupiter. And I really want to dive into the symbolism here. So Venus is in her fall in Aries, meaning Venus rules Libra, and Aries is the sign directly opposite Libra. So Aries is a Mars-ruled sign. And my experience of Venus in a Mars-ruled sign is that it's the conquest, the conqueror, that it wants to pursue what it wants instead of what Venus is supposed to do, which is kind of sit back on her half shell and let things come to her. And so we have this real tension with Venus and Aries, and with Jupiter magnifying and intensifying the experience of Venus in Aries. And so what we have are some mixed messages around love. And so now I'm going to talk about Jupiter. And I want to talk about Jupiter and kind of really go into the symbolism of this. So Jupiter, we think of Jupiter, a lot of people think of, and some of the students, my early, first year students are like, Jupiter is amazing. All good things for Jupiter. And I think we've seen with Jupiter's time in Aries that Jupiter isn't always that beneficial. The thing about Jupiter is that it blows up, meaning it magnifies and intensifies the potentiality of any sign that it's in. So Jupiter commands attention. It wants to be known. It is the brightest planet in our solar system. And I'm kind of a science geek. I love watching nova and space documentaries. and one of the things, when I was watching Nova, I understood Jupiter so well. Have you ever seen the show? Do you know the show on PBS?
No, but I love that you're a science geek. It's horrible.
Yeah. So if anyone has a chance to watch the planetary series on Nova, do it, because you learn so much about the astrology of these planets. So Nova describes Jupiter as being a bully. And some scientists call Jupiter and Saturn the architects of the solar system because their orbital paths and their size kind of structures and orders all who gets dust, like what planets get dust, which is how a planet grows. And so Jupiter grew so big and so fast that it prevented dust from coming to Earth, Mars, or Mercury, or Venus. So now, on the one hand, if the Earth were any bigger, we would not have survived. Life couldn't exist. And so we have to thank Jupiter for that. But on the other hand, it's preventing us from getting big. It's prevented our planet from getting bigger. So Jupiter's also responsible for helping keep comets and asteroids out of our orbit from hitting us. So it's a really big protective giant, but it's still a giant. And so when we think about Jupiter, think about like the clumsy giant, like I'm thinking of, like the Incredible Hulk, so big that it might stomp on things.
Even the giant in Harry Potter, I can't remember his name. It starts with an H. Anyways, he was kind of that clumsy giant as well, meaning well, but then kind of creating messes.
Yeah. So if Jupiter's in Aries, what does Aries rule? Aries rules entrepreneurship. It rules pioneering. It rules fire. It rules guns and weapons. And one of the big signatures that we've seen with Jupiter and Aries, Jupiter entered Aries last year, and right away we had mass shootings. We had, acts of violence. We had war. And so Jupiter in Aries shows us the shadow aspects of a sign big, so that then we say, we don't want this. We want some of the beautiful aspects of this sign. And one of some of the non-shadow aspects of Jupiter Aries rather, are that Aries is the sign of protection. It's the sign of protecting what we most hold dear. It's also the sign of being ourselves, our unique individual selves within the families, within the communities, within the culture of this world. And so I think, Jupiter expands the potential that we have to live our own divine spark. And it also can expand the potential for conflict and I think there are some conflicts that just need to happen, and especially in relationships. Like that's how we air out what's otherwise, being suppressed. And so I think we could have some of those kinds of experiences, some of those kinds of truth coming into the light, or, having heated conversations that then allow us to have productive change. One of the other things that I wanted to point out with this is that Mars is the dispositor of Venus and Jupiter. Mars rules Aries, and Mars is still out of bounds, meaning that it's not behaving the way it should. And the moon is also out of bounds this day too. I think of out of bounds planets as being like a race car that keeps going in and out of different lanes. And so we want to watch out for using angry words. We want to watch out for acting too impulsively. This transit gives us a lot of optimism. It gives us a lot of hope. And so we can really manifest and create a whole lot of great things happening if we are discerning. And that's going to be the key to this. These Venus and Jupiter are also both, they form a conjunction with a pulsar. And pulsars are like little cosmic messengers, Philip Sedgwick calls them ambassadors. And so we feel with that influence, we have things that we want to communicate, things that we want to express, but we want to express them in a way that harmonizes differences. So this could be a great time for mediating challenging relationships. This can be a great time for bringing light to a situation that we need to bring light to, and for shining light on anything that's kind of lurking in the shadows.
It sounds like going into any of those situations with the intention to create more harmony as an outcome, even if it creates some disruption and disturbance in the moment, but doing that for the outcome of this will result in greater harmony, at some point.
Yeah.
It seems like that would help us to utilize some of the sort of fiery potential of this Aries energy without it blowing things up and creating destruction in the end.
That's a really beautiful way of articulating it. Yes. I think that's the potential. The potential is we can come together. We can love in much bigger ways. And any barrier to love, i.e. fear, i.e., disagreements or disappointments, anything we're bringing into our relationships that's kind of a carryover from the past that isn't working, isn't healthy in the dynamics of our relationships, we're slowly, subtly starting to sort of compost that stuff, send it to where it needs to go so that we can show up more authentically in our relationships.
And going back to what you said in the beginning, potentially it's that the relationship needs a new structure or a new definition or an expanded structure or definition, because whatever way we've been acting within it isn't working anymore. It's ready for a new sort of life.
Yes. And so, I think one of the worst things that we can do is go into this transit thinking, oh, Jupiter and Venus are coming together. Oh my God, it's going to be all romantic. Because sometimes what the relationship requires, and Jupiter wants to usher us on the path that's going to be the most joyful. And if we're in a relationship that is just not that we've been wrestling with for a long period of time, that we can't, there are differences that we can't mediate and that are really a struggle, then Jupiter is going to gently, sweetly, and powerfully nudge us in a different direction. So we have to be open to loving ourselves, compassion for ourselves when we are faced with those really hard choices, and not allow those Saturn structures, those rigid rules to define our decisions and our actions. That it's a combination of Saturn and Jupiter, joy and structure and commitment. And once we can marry those two, then the path opens for those deep experiences of love.
And Rachel, are you mainly referring to intimate relationships, or could this be the spectrum of relationships? Could this be relationship with child, with coworker, with friend, with, is this a vast relationship definition, or is it mainly that real core sort of intimate exchange?
It's any kind of relationship, but because Mars disposits Venus, and so Mars is a player in this, and Venus, we're talking about Venus, we are primarily talking about our intimate relationships. But look at where Aries is in your chart. Every single house in a chart is a relationship. The first house is your relationship with yourself. Your third house is your relationship with your siblings, your neighbors, your teachers, your students. Fourth house is your family. Look at wherever Aries is in your chart. That's the relationship that's going to be the focal point for you. And all of us, it's our relationship with ourselves, because we're talking about Aries, but relationships in general.
Okay, brilliant. All right, so that's Wednesday. So we have a huge Wednesday, the biggest day of the week, pretty much.
It's the biggest day of the week. And
how does that continue to fall out or play out?
So that carries us into, we've got big feelings too, because the moon's out of bounds. The moon's in Cancer. on March 2nd. And so we're still sort of in a little bit of the hangover of the big feels. And sometimes, I love the work of Gay Hendricks. Are you familiar with Gay Hendricks?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Also, yes.
Yeah, me too. And so he talks about the upper limit problem. And
Yes.
and so if we have like these really breakthrough experiences of love and connection, then on the 1st, then on the 2nd, we might have like one of those upper limit challenges where it's like, we were way outside of our comfort zone and we don't want to pull a stunt that brings us back into our comfort zone or that tears us away from relationships and love. And this is one of the challenges that we have as we're moving into Thursday and Friday. And that is that Venus is sliding past Jupiter on her way to Chiron. And Chiron is the little planetoid that relates to, I always think about Chiron not in terms of being the great big traumas of our lives or being those super pain points, but being the microcurrents of pain that we experience just in living life, childhood and adolescence, meaning the realizations of how we're different from our peers. They're the school bully who's always there every day. They're the feelings of being different. It's the recurring story that kind of shows up off and on and reminds us of, some of the bigger life challenges that we're working on. And so Venus meets up with Chiron. And I look at these two coming together as being, healing, a real healing opportunity for some of those challenges. And we also have Mercury and Saturn connecting at 29 degrees of Aquarius. So Mercury is always a messenger. It always wants to deliver some kind of news. And the news that it's going to have is about Saturn related things. So we talked about, if Wednesday is big love, big awareness, big insight, Thursday is, okay, I've had my big experience. Now I've got to work through some resistance that's coming up, or, childhood stuff is emerging and I need to create some sacred space for myself to go into, whatever emotions are rising. And Mercury is, how am I going to create a path forward based on all that came up over the earlier part of the week. So Mercury kind of gets us focused. And so we're going to kind of be in two different poles. We've got the Cancer Moon, Venus Chiron pole into the emotions, the very cerebral Mercury Saturn pole into getting work done. And so it's really going to be important to balance those two different impulses at that time. And if you can take a couple of days off, really taking time off on March 1st and 2nd, having a vacation, going to the water, doing something that is really nourishing on a soul level, that can help with some of just the intensity of that time.
It reminds me of what Gay Hendricks says about the upper limit, that basically, for those of you who are familiar with it, it's that we have these, and Rachel, you did a great job explaining it. I'll just say it again in a different way, but we have these sort of breakthrough experiences in relationships where we might experience a new level of closeness or intimacy that we haven't experienced before. And when that happens, we feel vulnerable. We feel sort of exposed. And often what people tend to do is they kind of sabotage it by, picking a fight or, doing something that creates more separation, because that level of closeness is almost like too much to handle. And one of the things that they recommend to do in those situations is to take a break. So it's often the desire is like, oh my gosh, we just had that amazing experience. We're so close. I just want to be close again. But then in that, I just want to be close again, that's where the sabotage happens. And then you're more disconnected than ever and super let down because you just experienced this high. So it's this like cycle that we go through in relationships. But what I'm hearing from you is that the astrology is actually setting us up to really be encouraged to take space. So whatever that situation is in your life where you're having these new kinds of experiences or big feeling, it would be smart to then listen to the cosmic curriculum, which is saying, don't push it, take some space. And it might feel a little counterintuitive, but take the space because that will enable the closeness and the breakthrough that you just experienced to last longer and for you to revel in that, because we have to integrate those experiences into our bodies. You have to actually, experience the new level on many different levels of our being, and taking space is a great way to do that. So I love that you just brought that up. That's perfect.
Yep. I know. You're absolutely right that the astrology asks us to integrate. And one of the things that I think is a real opportunity is that having that the accelerated experience of connection or love, or, it could even just be creativity. It could just be blast open of an idea that you want to bring into fruition. Because Aries is a very pioneering, let's get going kind of sign. All planets are still moving forward. That cardinal energy is very directed and very pointed. And so that Thursday could really be pulling back, pulling inward, taking a break from whatever it is that we're doing, and allowing the experience of love and connection and passion and emotion, allowing that experience to be transformative, allowing love to heal. Or if sad feelings came up, really just sitting with them and not trying to fight them back.
Okay, awesome. Very good. All right, so we have this couple days of integration after Wednesday. Anything for the weekend that we want to keep in mind?
Yes. So then the vibe shifts. We've got the moon moving into Leo on the 3rd. I always love a Leo moon. The moon is going to be moving into a trine aspect with all these fiery planets. And so it sets us up for just a good time. We're having fun. Saturn is on its way, it's inching toward Pisces, and it is resistant because Saturn loves Aquarius. It's the traditional ruler of Aquarius. And so we've got Saturn kind of nope, I'm not quite ready to leave the party. And the moon saying, I'm ready to party. And so this is, I'm looking at the weekend's astrology and thinking, oh yeah, this is a good time for, planning your get together, or for, here at least, the sun's finally out in California where I live, for getting outside. A fire moon urges us to want to get outside and move our bodies and play. And so the 3rd kind of ushers us into the weekend feeling a little bit more okay, we've gone through kind of the swell of intensity. Now we're coming down, enjoying a whole new energy. Mercury is also going to be in Pisces on that day as well. So Mercury moving into Pisces kind of makes it a little bit more, we're not going to be as concerned with getting tasks done and doing our job. We're going to want to, really invest time and energy in our heart connections, in communicating in ways that move us away from the computer and away from email and move us into IRL conversations. So this is a great time for your, like I said, your parties, your get-togethers, your, little pre-spring reunions, and you still have Jupiter and Venus pretty close to each other. So they're still relating. They're still getting to know one another, or still connecting with one another. So a great time for cooking, for baking, for doing anything that is pleasurable, obviously within reason and within ethical standard. But yeah, Jupiter and Venus are still shining on one another, making it a day for real connection. I also like the sun. The sun's kind of moving up toward a sextile aspect with Uranus. So again, we're feeling on the edge of our seats. Can we really relax? We probably can't really relax because all of these cycles are shifting. There is some astro coming, next week. This is a good time to just dance, to have fun, and to really, enjoy ourselves.
And is that true all weekend?
Yes. So that is the case on the 4th as well. And yeah, all weekend it's the calm after the storm, whether it's a storm of hearts and flowers or it's a storm of, relationship awareness or whatever it is. It's the same energy we have on the 4th as well.
So it's like calm after the storm, but also before the storm.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it is. We're not going to really feel 100% comfortable while Pluto and Saturn are both at that 29, at those 29-degree points. It's impossible for us to feel comfortable because everything's getting ready to change. And we don't know what that looks like yet. Kind of have glimpses of it. We'll see some glimpses in the news. Truth will be coming out. We don't really know until April. And so what's funny is that everything is happening really fast. All planets are moving direct. The world is moving fast, but our own lives, we feel, are kind of moving slow. So there's this altered sense of time and space. Like the Mars is out of bounds, meaning that things are erratic. Saturn and Pluto are at 29 degrees on the precipice of change. And so we're in this still life with a lot of life teeming around us. And so I think what we can do that over the weekend is play, really get together with friends, dance, create, do what you want to do. Like, don't pack your schedule full of too many obligations while Venus is still in Aries, while Jupiter is moving, Jupiter is in Aries. Like, do what brings you joy. And I think that'll be a good way to celebrate the weekend.
I love when the astrology aligns with what in our calendar rhythm feels right. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's nice that, and also you also just gave us a permission slip to take Thursday and Friday off of work.
Right.
And then to really just play and enjoy the weekend, which sounds like whenever I hear these things, I remind myself, and I hopefully remind all of you, that it's really important to take these periods of time, because it's like we get nourished and fortified for what's ahead. And when we skip through these moments that are really, truly just about play or joy or enjoyment or connecting or things that we often put off because they don't seem as quote unquote important. When we make them important, then we allow ourselves to get whatever sort of resources we need for whatever's coming next on the journey, which in this situation, we know that there's huge astrology in March. We know that there's massive shifts. And when you said that it feels like the world is moving ahead and maybe we're not, I can absolutely feel that, that I've been exposed to certain things lately where it's like, whoa, there's all these things happening, especially around technology. And it's like, whoa, there's all these things happening that I haven't even been aware of that are just kind of mind blowing. And I'm not there yet. I haven't caught up there, but I can see that that's where the world is going. I can see that this is the next wave of development. That's not just sort of oh, there's some shiny new things. It's no. These are revolutionizing the way that we work and live. And there's all the integration of well, how do I feel about that? What level do I want to participate in that? I mean, there's so many things that have come up, but I love the story arc that you laid out for us this week, that it is about love, that it is about exploring our own relationship to what love is. It's about expanding those definitions. It's about really getting clear on what actually love is and what actually isn't love, and where things might need to transform for us as far as how we're loving, who we're loving, in what ways we're expressing love or receiving love, all those topics, which is super juicy and kind of endless. But sounds like the spotlight is there this week. You said love to the nth degree. And it doesn't always look the same as we thought it might look. That we have this big overarching theme of being sort of in between. We're not in the future yet, but we're not we're closing things up from the past. I always like to think of the word faith when it comes into those in-between moments, because it can be really unnerving to not know and to feel like you're sort of floating in between those spaces. But that's where the faith that something new is coming, that you'll get your footing again in that new thing. And it's okay to kind of feel disoriented in between. It's all right. And that's sort of natural part of evolving through time and space, at least on this, in this realm. So, and Monday and Tuesday is sort of the build up. Wednesday, which is the big day of Jupiter and Venus, the conjunction between Jupiter and Venus, but that you brought out this Aries energy of it's sort of exploding the potential of Aries energy, both in the less mature expression, which can be the aggression and the dominance and that kind of thing, but also in the more mature expression, which can be that real deep impulse to protect what is innocent and valuable and true. So we have that spectrum of possibility on Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday really integrating that, and then Saturday and Sunday having fun and playing. So that was basically my summary, which I'd like to do at the end. But did I leave anything out that feels really important to highlight?
I think you covered it all. You really did cover it all. And if I could just piggyback on two things just really quickly.
Yeah.
So, what you were talking about with just, establishing our perspective that of what's productive and what's not productive. And when Saturn moves, Saturn's been in its own sign since it entered Capricorn for 5.5, 6 years. So Saturn's been in a very industrious place. When Saturn enters Pisces on the 7th, it is like suddenly what is most productive is going to be like not even the question. We're going to be more comfortable being defined by our experiences of nourishment, of healing, of attending to our mental health. So our whole framework for what our values based on is all starting to shift, and it continues to shift as Pluto enters Aquarius. Also, anytime Pluto has been in Aquarius, we've had these huge scientific revolutions. So when you're talking about technology and technological revolution, we had the Copernican theory coming out during Pluto's Pluto's time in Aquarius. So even our understanding of our place in the universe starts to change, and huge scientific revolutions. And that's all, we're on the precipice of that right now. We're kind of building up to that. So you spoke to these two cycles and the potential for these two cycles. And so, so we need to play, we need to relax. We need to not try to put too much pressure on ourselves over the next week. Or at least, throughout, up until these cycles begin.
So good. Okay. Before I let you go, can I ask you what you're going to be teaching in the inner circle when you're an astrologer?
Yes. I am going to be teaching about magic and the lunation cycle. So it's really perfect that we brought that up, that we discussed it. I'll be talking all about your natal moon. I'll be talking about how to work with the moon. And so it's really kind of like really practical astrological magic.
I love it. I love it. I love that this is becoming more a part of the conversation. And I love what you said earlier about what magic actually is. And there's this perception of it that it's, some sort of dark thing off in the corner. And it's like, no, actually, it's really just alignment with nature. It's like infusing our intentionality with the rhythms of nature, with the potential of what nature holds. It was so funny. I was on a call earlier today, and this woman is working on this project where she's gotten sort of introduced to the world of magic and quote unquote witches and spirituality. And so she's realizing that there's this whole huge community of people who are interested in exploring these things. And she's like, what's so amazing is that, it's like regular people like you, and I'm like, well, yeah. It's like, because we don't have green faces, I'm not like walking around with our broomsticks and pointy hats. It really is this perception. And I had this perception too, that it's really beautiful to be bringing it into the conversation in a way that feels practical, feels grounded, feels accessible, and is also really fun and expansive. I mean, there's so much we can do with it. So I love that you're bringing that into the inner circle. Really looking forward to your month. It feels really far away from now, but it'll be here before we know it.
Right.
And for any of you who are interested in getting on the waitlist for the inner circle, we will be opening up enrollment in March. We are going to be hosting an amazing event that's totally free. Rachel will be a part of this event. It is called Game Changing Transits. We're going to be talking about those big life transits, some that we all experience, some that only some of us have on our dance card in this lifetime, but that are just those big game changers that just kind of change everything in your life. And you look at it and go, wow, there was my life before this astrological transit, and there's my life after this astrological transit. We'll be doing that. That'll be our kickoff event for the inner circle, which is going to be open for enrollment later in March. So if you want to get on the wait list for the inner circle, you can do that now. It's astrologyhub.com/IC23. I as in inner, C as in circle, the number's 23. Rachel, so happy to have you here for our weekly weather. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda.
I feel totally prepared for this week ahead. I hope all of you do too. Thanks to all of you for being here, for being a part of our community, and as always, for making astrology a part of your life. Can't wait to connect with you on the next episode. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Did you know there's a whole universe that you can unlock with so-called minor aspects? Most astrologers don't even use them, but Master Astrologer Rick Levine calls them harmonic aspects, saying they're key to revealing the deeper, metaphysical dimension of a birth chart, including the creative, mystical, and unseen parts of ourselves and others. And if you want a taste of how powerful they can be, just listen to what he has to say about some of the subtiles in play during his February and March forecast.
There's one other thing that happens in February. By the 12th, Venus makes a septile. That's 1/7 of a circle to Pluto. Venus makes a septile to Uranus. Boom, boom. What are septiles? They're otherworldly. They're supernatural. Dane Rudger said they were fated. Things come out and things come through that were somehow in other realms. And like Uranus, it's like lightning striking. And I think the combination of Mercury going into Uranus's modern sign of Aquarius and all these septiles will awaken us to the idea that we don't see everything that we think we do. Of course, it's not lost on me that this is the first week of Foundations Level 3 course. And it's just such an overwhelming septile message that we get from the universe. I really think that there's going to be a bit of a wake up in mid-February.
If you're ready to uncover these powerful unseen aspects in your chart, join us for Astrology Foundations Level 3 with Master Astrologer Rick Levine at astrologyhub.com/foundations3.